Looking for something to read? Well, these are the books that I've written. Hop on down to the description to find the Amazon links for all 4 of them, and keep your eyes open for more in the future. With that said, on to the video. Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am the Omni viewer, and things are piling up in terms of kaiju and giant monster news. So, just before I get to the GAMERA episode, which is going to comprise the bulk of this review, yes, I have seen the trailer for Monarch Legacy of Monsters. Brief as it is, it does look very intriguing. I'm curious to see where they're gonna go with it. The special effects actually look like they're on par with the movies. And no, I don't necessarily think that flying creature we see throughout is supposed to be a redesign of Gauss. But if it is, holy crud. But again, I don't think that's the case, because we haven't gotten any confirmation about anything GAMERA related being in the monsterverse as yet. Although, with that recent mobile game collaboration, which we were initially told was one of the many things that would never happen because Toho hates anyone who deals with GAMERA so much that they would never allow a crossover of any kind, who knows. But anyway, that's beside the point. We need to get to the 3rd episode of GAMERA Rebirth, Run Silent, Run Deep, which, incidentally, is also the title of a very intense World War II naval thriller. Interestingly enough, about submarines from America combating submarines from Japan. It's a very good movie. I have seen it. I highly recommend it. But it has nothing to do with the episode besides the title. So, how does this episode fare? Let's get into it. I will be honest, I wasn't as thrilled with this one simply because we spent so much time with the human characters. And the reason for that is twofold. First and foremost, as we've already established, there's the animation and the character designs when it comes to the human side of things. I know I've said it before, but it never stops being true. The character designs and the way they are animated look like butt. I'm generally more articulated than that if you're new to the channel, but there's just no other way to put it. The human characters in this show look like butt. Of the many things I have seen that look like butt, it is among the buttest of them all. My own butt doesn't look as much like butt as these characters do, and I would prove it, but I want to be able to monetize this video, so you'll just have to take my word for it. So spending so much time with them and having to look at those visuals when I'd rather be looking at the much better monster visuals, that just is not a good trade-off. The other reason is because their attempts at comedy here really don't land. It starts with Joe being incredibly seasick, and then generally transitions over to Inagani is his name? That one adult guy with the wavy hair. Him being claustrophobic. And they're playing it for comedy. They're not trying to play it like some sort of serious thing. And the adult being claustrophobic and cowardly and scared kind of plays back to the Showa Gamera era where adults tended to be kind of useless. But I don't know, it just doesn't land here. It overstays its welcome, I think, is the thing. It lasts too long, and thus it just gets grating after a while. I mean, it wasn't exactly funny to begin with, but I could have just written it off if they'd known when to stop. But they didn't, which is unfortunate. And of course, we get the twist at the end, which is something I suspected back in episode 1, that Junichi is actually a girl. I kind of figured that. I know I didn't say it back in the first episode review, but I was watching that episode, I was picking up on things like how Junichi behaved and spoke, and certain scenes in which the character's behavior didn't seem to fit with the 2 boys she was hanging out with, and I just thought, I wonder if Junichi's supposed to be a girl. Obviously a tomboy in the extreme, but still a girl. And of course, in this particular episode, the characters were going out of their way to avoid using pronouns when referring to Junichi, and there was a direct parallel drawn between Junichi and a character who is clearly a woman. That's pretty much confirmed in this episode. You know the scene I'm talking about. So I looked at all of that and I was like, yeah, they're gonna confirm it by the end, most likely, and they did. So I can't really say I'm surprised. What I am surprised by is that Brody is only 12 years old, when his design makes him look like he's in at least his late teens. Although then again, when I was 12, I looked like I was almost 22, so who am I to judge? Still though, all the human stuff in this episode just didn't land for me. The one part of all those scenes that I thought actually was a nice little touch was that whenever we're on the boat, the camera is just steadily rocking ever so slightly to create the sense that we are on a boat and the waves are gently rocking the ship. It's very subtle, but I haven't seen it in the other episodes. I only saw it here, specifically when we were on the boat, not when we were on land, not when we were in the sub. So a nice touch from the animation department in that regard. The human characters still look terrible though. But in the kaiju genre, the general rule of thumb is that although it's preferable to have good humans and good monsters, when the humans fail to deliver entertainment, the monsters should at least be able to deliver. And I would say they do. Zigra is our main opponent in this episode, and I will say I was a little bit concerned about whether or not they would deliver with him, because Zigra is just so different from the other kaiju, not just in the Gamera series, but of all kaiju, really. One comment on the previous episode's review pointed out that Zigra in Rebirth has a few personality similarities to Gauss, particularly the scene where there are a whole bunch of Zigras in the sewer and then they eat each other until there's only one huge one left. That was associated with the Heisei Gauss specifically. And that could point to the idea that the kaiju, aside from Gamera of course, were going to just be sort of one basic personality transferred across multiple different designs. And I mean, I didn't mention it in the second episode review because it was one scene that just went by and the Zigra action sequence was still so good that I was able to forgive it. But as I was thinking about it, and as I was looking at Zigra's design and how, if you squint at it just right, it could potentially be a Gauss redesign in and of itself, I did wonder if perhaps that was going to be a problem. And of course Zigra, like I said, Zigra is very distinct among kaiju, partly because he is not a typical kaiju. Yes, he's big, yes, he has powers and everything, but he's also technically an intelligent alien. He even speaks in his original movie. So that was something that I didn't necessarily think they were going to do, but I'll get to more on that in a moment. But I was worried that they were technically going to take this interesting, unique monster, who, as ridiculous as he looks, still stands out, and reduce him to just another big dumb monster that says roar and smash things, which if you've been watching my videos for long enough, you know I'm not necessarily that fond of, especially when you have such a wide roster of monsters to choose from. I'm happy to report that I do think they made Zigra different. See, with Gauss and Zigra in the previous two episodes, they were presented almost like rabid wolves. They were just blindly attacking and eating, and not that they were lacking in personality, mind you, but they didn't have any real method to their madness. They were just ravenous and nearly insane in how they were going about things. So that contrasted well with Gamera, who you could tell was thinking things through, coming up with strategies, or checking to make sure that the kids were safe before he really let loose. Zigra is different. At first it seems like he is just going to be another attack and eat whatever is in front of me kind of monster, but as the episode progresses we see that he is a little bit sharper than Zigra and Gauss. He's hunting. He's not just randomly attacking. He has methods to try and figure out where his prey is and how best to immobilize his prey so he can attack. When Gamera surfaces in the bay for the final fight, he's sneaking his tail, which is eerily similar to Zigra's, so I'm not so sure I like that part, but even so, since it's there, he slips it into the water without Gamera noticing so he can have an extra attack in case his first attack fails or he needs to dodge or something, or just so he can deal double damage to Gamera. So there are instances here in which Zigra is shown to be a more intelligent creature. Could they have done more? Absolutely. Of course they could have done more. They could have taken some of those comedy scenes, shaved them down, and given us more instances in which we see Zigra strategizing, or just sort of, like I said, they could have done more with him. But just because they could have done more doesn't mean that I lack appreciation for what they did. And what they did for the episode as it is, I think was good in demonstrating that Zigra is somehow different from the others, even if he does have some resemblances to the previous kaiju. But you may also note that I said earlier that I would be getting back to the fact that Zigra can talk. And well, that was a major point in the first movie. Zigra was actually not even the character's proper name, if you want to get technical. It's the name of the whole species. We just call him Zigra because we never find out what his actual name is. But he at one point does talk coherently in Japanese, or English if you watch the dub. And that was one of the major things that set Zigra apart from other kaiju. He could talk. Like, unless you were watching Super Sentai / Power Rangers, that was not a common thing. So I kind of figured Zigra wasn't going to talk in this episode because it seemed like they were setting things up pretty clearly, and they had a world, they had a plan, a tone, a theme, and everything, and having one of the monsters randomly start speaking and speechifying for some reason would have been out of place. To my surprise, right during the finale, right as Gamera comes out of the water, Zigra turns and makes a sound that is clearly different from his other vocalizations. It sounds like a word. I don't think it is necessarily. If it is, it's in a language I don't recognize. But it's kind of something like a word. So they kind of found a way to have Zigra talk in a way that didn't completely conflict with everything. You could listen to it and think, oh, it's just a different kind of growl or roar or something, or you could listen to it and think, maybe he's speaking some kind of ancient language. It's up to you, I guess. But they did find a way to work it in, which did surprise me. Unfortunately, Gamera did not play Zigra like a xylophone after defeating him, but you can't have everything, I guess. So I would say this is my least favorite episode thus far, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a bad episode. The human stuff is what brings it down, but like I said, they delivered with Zigra, and I was a little concerned about how they would do Zigra. I'm glad to say they did him well, and especially with the underwater fight. The way that underwater fight was shot was almost like an aerial dogfight, except, you know, underwater. They made good use of the fact that this is animation and you can have the camera and the subjects being filmed zip around everywhere without limitations of wires or stuff like that. So it was a memorable battle. And I do think they did Zigra justice, even though, again, they could have done a little more. Still appreciate what they did, but who knows? If they ever bring Zigra back for a full-blown theatrical film, maybe they'll be able to display him in a different kind of updated way. But for what it is, I appreciate it. And that's all I have to say about this episode. On to episode 4. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni viewer running deep. Signing off. Thank you all for watching. If you want to see us keep doing what we're doing, you might consider doing all the usual YouTube things, as well as hopping down to the description to find links to DeviantArt, Patreon, Twitter, and links for the different books in the Tales from the Omni Vault universe. Your support is naturally appreciated. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.